AITA for inviting my dad's girlfriend to my birthday dinner? My parents split up 2 years ago. It was not a mutual decision. My dad made the decision and my mum just kind of had to accept it. For context, they had been together for 28 years. They were never married and I am their only child. I never remember them being together in the traditional sense. For example, my dad slept on the couch my whole life and they never went on dates, etc. My mum struggled with postpartum depression after having me and never really recovered from it. She didn't have a job for most of my life, she just recently got one, and struggled with mental health issues such as anxiety, which I think was hard for both of them. There was an overall lack of communication in the relationship and eventually my dad decided to move out. My mum was devastated but obviously couldn't do anything about it. 3 months after, my dad let both my mum and I know that he was seeing someone else. My mum was beyond upset and had a breakdown. I was upset at first but just kind of accepted it as I'd already accepted the breakup and was moving past it. I just found out recently that my dad was seeing his new girlfriend, 50F, before he ended things with my mum. My mum doesn't know but suspects. My dad promised that he would help support my mum financially after they split. I know he doesn't have to do this but I think it is a kind gesture. At first, he would give her money every month to help her get by. Now that she has a job he really only helps pay for things when she really needs it. For example, he wouldn't see her without a car so he'll help her fund repairs if sneezed. My dad is not perfect but he has made an effort to remain friendly with my mum since the split. My mum has never met his girlfriend but I have and she's never given me a reason to dislike her. I don't know her well but she is friendly and makes an effort to include me in family things. My birthday is coming up this month and I have decided to invite my dad's new girlfriend to my celebratory dinner. It has been 2 years since they started seeing each other and I feel bad not inviting her. It is not a particularly intimate family dinner so my mum can be seated far away from my dad's girlfriend if she wants. I decided to broach the subject with my mum before officially asking my dad in case she was going to be extremely distressed by it, so I asked her about 2 months ago how she'd feel about it. She said it was okay. I also invited her boyfriend at the time but they are no longer together. I thought everything was okay so I officially asked my dad's girlfriend to come and she agreed. I then mentioned it to my mum a few days ago and she became really upset. She said she might not come to my birthday dinner as she feels so uncomfortable. I feel awful and now feel like maybe I've been disloyal and shouldn't have invited my dad's girlfriend. Should I cancel the dinner so my mum doesn't need to be put in this situation? Should I uninvite my dad's girlfriend? Comment. You made a commitment based on your mum telling you it's okay. She doesn't get to change her mind at this point and force you to uninvite or cancel. That's just unreasonable. It seems that your dad and mom had a very unique relationship. I wonder if your father only stayed around out of obligation because your mom got pregnant. This is just based on that he always slept on the couch and they never went on dates. In any case, it is nice that you want to maintain a healthy relationship with both of your parents. I realize that your mom is hurt and it is very hard to build a career if she hasn't worked in the last 20 years but she can still do it. Sadly, many couples go their separate ways once their kids grow up. I do think my dad only stayed around because of me. My mum told me about 10 years ago that they would have broken up if she hadn't fallen pregnant with me, so I've always kind of known it was coming. The only thing I was really upset about when they broke up was my dad moving out and the thought of them not getting on throughout the rest of my life. Next story 2. AITA, if I were to get my daughter's last name changed to be the same as mine? For context, my middle child K is not biologically mine. My wife and I both had a child from previous relationships when we were married. When my wife and I began dating, K was 2, almost 3. Both of our daughters were close in age and became sisters quickly. One day, when K was about 4, she asked me if it'd be okay to call me Dad. I told her of course she could. It broke my heart a little bit that she felt like she had to ask. But, I also felt honored that she wanted me to be Dad. When K was about 6, I picked her up from school. On the way home she asked if it'd be okay to see her biological father. Her mother told me it was a bad idea, but I thought it was important. I didn't want K to ever feel like I stood in between her and her biological father and kept them from having a relationship. So I called him, introduced myself, and asked if he'd like to be able to spend time with his daughter. It went well for almost a year, then nothing. He ghosted her. It broke her heart. One day I caught up with him at the gas station and asked him what's the problem. He told me that K wouldn't hug one of his other children. He also expressed his disappointment with K calling me dad. How a grown-ass man can turn his back on his own child is something I'll probably never understand. That's been 10 years ago. K is now 16. She's told others as far as she's concerned, her bio father is dead. What I didn't realize is that it bothers her to have his last name. Sometimes she feels embarrassed that she has a different last name than the rest of us. As far as I've been concerned, she has always been my daughter, and a name is just a name. Problem is, attempting this will almost certainly cause problems with her biological father. That doesn't bother me though, since I have zero respect for that deadbeat fucker, but I've always held out some hope that he'd grow up and try to repair their relationship. I'd be honored if she had my last name, but I also realize that some of my own selfishness creeping in. Ultimately it'll be her choice. I'd have done it years ago had I'd known it bothered her. If anyone has been through a similar experience, I'd be interested in hearing how it was handled and the long-term outcome. Comment. Provided you really do mean this bit. Ultimately it'll be her choice. She's 16, so it must be her choice. You can facilitate things for her, such as getting hold of the required Form S, paying the money for it, co-signing the paperwork because she's still a minor, and so on. That would be a kind thing to do, because 16-year-olds are not great at navigating the adult world of bureaucracy. But at every step of the way, you and your wife need to make it clear to your daughter, this is your decision, and if at any point you change your mind, we'll stop the process. And if you want to pause for a while, and think some more about it, that's fine too. She needs to be confident that she's the one in the driver's seat. You and your wife are just assisting her. What her biological father thinks is irrelevant. I don't want her to do it just because it's a chance to hurt someone who has hurt her. That's an excellent point. Trying to hurt him would be a terrible reason for her to change her name. I think you're doing the right thing. Encourage her to talk to you both, and to reflect on it privately. Remind her that there's no rush. She can change her name anytime she likes, 5 years from now, 10 years, 20 years, or never. A couple more years might even alter her perspective. If you think she's carrying around a lot of resentment and heartbreak stemming from her biological father's rejection, and it's weighing down on her, you may want to consider counseling. Not so much about the name change specifically, but about the wider issues. She's old enough to decide. My GF changed her name to her mom's name for Father's Day for the same reason and has completely cut him off. Petty and glorious. NTA, but DGF, which means damn great father. You should have a good conversation with your wife and discuss how to talk to M about changing M's last name. Then the both of you should talk to M. But in all honesty, I think your daughter will be honored to have your last name and feel closer to you. Remember, you are her true dad. You were the one who treated her like a daughter and the person she acknowledges as her father. Good luck. So, I'll assume you've never adopted her. I imagine you've already looked up the legal process for this potential name change. Her bio father will have to sign off on it, while she's still a minor. If he won't sign the paperwork, then you have to serve him with legal notice of the case by a constable, sheriff, or private process server. Once she's 18, she can do it herself without any parental approval/notification. I was in a similar position to your daughter in that although I had my mother's last name, my first name was chosen by my bio dad, and he'd only chosen it because it was his sister's surname. It had nothing to do with me or who he hoped I'd become, and always felt like a rubbish fit. I hated the name with a passion, and as a teenager begged everyone to use my middle name because I wanted nothing to do with that man, and still had a whole heap of hang-ups associated with my legal first name. Eventually I did a deed poll and changed my own name myself to something that felt more me, and have been much happier since. This is something your daughter wants to do, to be able to feel more free. Then I think you're a good dad for wanting to support her all her life. For a few reasons. First, for calling her bio father when her mother had said not to, when she was only 6 years old, which is not old enough for her to understand and process all the complications that come with having a deadbeat father. She'd never have been hurt by her father ghosting her again if you'd listened to and respected her mother, who actually knew the fellow and had made an informed decision about contact. Second, you say that you are ready to deal with the fallout of her changing her last name. But the worst of the fallout won't land on you, it will land on her. And she's only 16, she shouldn't have to deal with this. Third, you are discussing her changing her name with her, but not with her mother, who is the adult best placed to understand the nature of the difficulties her bio father might create. It's the same disrespectful choice that led to all the problems mentioned in my first point. Fourth, you say you'd feel honored if she to your name. But this isn't about you. Changing her name, legally, will have all sorts of practical complications beyond the family dynamic. Think less about yourself, and more about the lifelong implications a legal name change would have for her. Fate has spun the thread of her life such that you and her bio-father are inevitably in competition for her attention and affection. Your ideas about her bio-father and the role he should have in her life have already led to you harming her, by bringing her bio-father back into her life, temporarily, only to have her badly hurt when he leaves. And you did this against her mother's wishes. She clearly knew the character of the bio-father and used that knowledge to make decisions about his role in Kay's life. Your meddling made things worse. For any issues involving her bio-father, you need to keep the mother in the loop of any discussions, and give her final say on any adult decisions that need to be made. Your line needs to be "This involves your bio-father, and any conversations and decisions about him need to include your mother." Finally, you've made no mention as to whether or not you've legally adopted Kay. This is an important detail. If you have legally adopted her, then bio-dad has given up his parental rights, and can't interfere with the name change. If you haven't legally adopted her, then you are not her parent or guardian, and cannot act to change her name. She's over 16, in less than 2 years, she'll be 18, and legally an adult. It's probably best to wait this out. Let any name change be because she's chosen to change her name, without interference with any of her parents, and not a matter of you getting her name changed.